was fairly uneventful. As it often goes for me month by month, I either watch 20 films or 5 films. There's never really an in-between. Nevertheless, it was a great month for movies, and I'm excited to share what I thought of each unique film. In total, I watched 9 films. However, 5 of them were rewatches. There was K-pop Demon Hunters, which, while I love the music and seeing Korean culture in the mainstream, I don't find the plot to be the most memorable, and I gave it a 3.5. There's Obsession from 2026, which I discussed in my May wrap-up video, Rental Family from 2025, which I gave a 4.5 stars, and I highly recommend it if you want a feel-good film about life. I always cry at the scene with the lesbians, and Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. While I won't often discuss rewatches, I am going to make an exception for Nightmare on Elm Street as my opinion somewhat shifted on my second viewing. That makes 6 films that I will be discussing this month, as we are somehow already halfway through the year. As always, these are my opinions, and feel free to share yours down below. Also, I will do my best to avoid spoilers, but no guarantees. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Directed by Rob Reiner, may he rest in peace, this is one of his more underrated and earlier films. In fact, it was only his second release in theaters following the success of This Is Spinal Tap, which I tragically haven't seen yet. Essentially, it's a rom-com that follows 2 college students, Walter Gibb Gibson, played by John Cusack, and Allison Bradbury. As is often the case in such films, the pair fall in stark contrast from one another. Gibb is easygoing, spontaneous, and doesn't always know the appropriate time for a joke. Bradbury, on the other hand, is an academic. She prefers a quiet night in a structured schedule. Naturally, as the two get to know each other better, well, on a road trip reminiscent of planes, trains, and automobiles, they learn to compromise, and even begin to develop personalities that are a mix of each other. This was a really fun movie, featuring the likes of Anthony Edwards and Tim Robbins, with a particularly impressive soundtrack. The road trip is definitely the best element, and in my opinion, it concludes pretty abruptly, but I enjoyed myself nonetheless. If you picture your standard 80s comedy, this is exactly it. If you appreciate something like that, then I would definitely check The Sure Thing out. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Ever since my grandma showed me the filmed production of Kathy Rigby's Peter Pan as a child, I was hooked on musicals. I may have enjoyed the mainstream musicals of the day, like High School Musical, but I also watched Newsies at least once a week and had not 1, but 3 Gene Kelly musical posters up on my bedroom wall by the age of 9. I performed in musicals growing up and still love participating in theater to this day. So, it may come as a surprise to some that I never listened to Waitress the Musical before this. I had never even seen the original movie starring Kerry Russell. All I knew was that the main character's name was Jenna, she was pregnant, and, spoiler, she has an affair with her doctor. That's it. So when my brother chose this for our movie night, I was excited to finally check it out. While Jessie Mueller originated the role of Jenna, the musical had returned to Broadway in 2021 with Sarah Bareilles, a popular singer as well as songwriter for Waitress itself, and that is what they filmed. While it's pretty easy to get into spoilers for this one, Waitress tells the story of baker Jenna, who works at a small diner in the Midwest with her 2 close friends, Becky and Dawn. She quickly finds out she's pregnant, struggles with an abusive marital relationship, and slowly starts to develop feelings for Dr. Palmater. Woven throughout the narrative is Jenna's close relationship with her deceased mother, as she had learned how to bake from her, particularly pies. It is her dream one day to open up her own pie shop. What I really loved from this musical is that, despite some really difficult material that they handle with great care, particularly around abuse, is that it is filled with hope. It also focuses a lot on Jenna and her strong female friendships, as well as other members of the community that really support her. I was really impressed that this was Bareilles' songwriting debut for a musical. It certainly has her typical style, but it fits so well into the story. I was also blown away by her acting, especially as Jenna is a very complex character that is put into extremely difficult and sometimes distressing situations. The choreography also really elevated the narrative, even if it was a bit on the nose at times. Also, if you were on TikTok anywhere between 2021 and 2023, you're going to recognize at least 3 songs that went viral on the app. Truly, I was astonished by how many moments I recognized simply because of that. The ending really wrapped up the story so well, and while I wouldn't say this is a musical I would return to a ton, there's just simply too many, I'm really glad I got to see this. Also, I think it's important to note that while I was writing this part of the script, I was listening to Singing in the Rain. Once a Gene Kelly fan, always a Gene Kelly fan. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves Listen, so many people in my life could tell you that, particularly as a child, I was into Disney. I didn't like Disney, I didn't love Disney, I lived Disney. And while that may seem normal for a child, or in fact many adults, it was different. I memorized facts about the creation of the Disney parks, watched old Disney programming like the original Mickey Mouse Club and Spin and Marty, pretended to work for the DVC Disney Vacation Club in my parents' room, read Walt Disney biographies, collected Disney pins, and my favorite actors included those in the old 50s and 60s live-action films, such as Tommy Kirk and Bobby Driscoll. As I've gotten older, my love for Disney has certainly become more nuanced. For starters, Walt Disney was a deeply complicated man. I've also grown disheartened by how child actors, such as those previously mentioned, were treated by the company, particularly early in its history. And I haven't loved a lot of Disney's film output recently. I mean, this certainly isn't applicable to everything. I thought Zootopia 2 was great. I think I'm one of the few people that appreciated Strange World, and Luca, which only came out a few years ago, is one of my favorite films. Period. I also may or may not be going on a trip to Walt Disney World this November. But then there is also films like Lightyear, and the many mostly horrible Disney remakes or unnecessary prequels like Mufasa, or the Disney company's absolute cowardice when it comes to actually supporting and highlighting representation for minority groups, especially queer and trans individuals, or having more movies where the people of color don't turn into animals for most of the film. This, of course, is speaking to the whole company and not specific animators and Imagineers. All that to say, I have a complicated relationship with Disney and did not feel like Toy Story needed a fifth movie. As far as the previous films, I really love the first three and think Toy Story 4 is pretty fun. Honestly, all four films are probably due for a rewatch. Going into Toy Story 5, I was hesitant. And ultimately, I had a good time. Would I shout to the streets that Pixar is back? No, I don't know if they'll ever reach the golden age of earlier Toy Story films, or Ratatouille, or WALL-E, or The Incredibles, but despite my fears, I enjoyed myself quite a bit. I appreciated that they discussed the consequences that can come from introducing young children to technology, but that good things can also come of it, that ultimately the best part of technology is that it connects us all. I didn't know that this was a Jessie-centric film, which I really liked, especially as, to this day, I am absolutely destroyed by Jessie's arc in Toy Story 2 and the song When She Left Me. I won't spoil it, but they wrap up Jessie's story in the perfect way, and I definitely wasn't crying. Buzz's story also wraps up very well, and since Woody found his ending in the previous film, it was nice to see him take a bit of a step back, though he is still a great element in the film. I also really like the new characters, particularly Smarty Pants, played by my favorite man, Conan O'Brien, Atlas, and Snappy. I even came around to Lilypad. This is also a beautiful film for strong female friendships. Eventually. So, if you enjoy the Toy Story franchise, I would say check this out. Does Disney still have a lot of work to do? Yes. Do I want them to make any more Toy Story films? No. But I had a fun time with this and enjoyed returning to these classic characters.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Despite the fact that I have been super into horror movies since college, nearly 10 years ago, I only watched Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time last year. While I liked it, particularly impressed with the practical effects that mostly hold up even today, I wasn't blown away. There were certainly horror classics at the time, such as The Slumber Party Massacre, one of the few horror movies at the time directed by a woman, or Black Christmas, that I preferred. I didn't love the acting, and the story felt a little incomplete to me, even though I completely understand why Freddy Krueger made for such an effective and timeless villain. Nonetheless, a year later, when I saw it was playing at my local drive-in, I wanted to check it out again. So I dragged my dad to the movies and gave it another watch. And while it didn't suddenly leap into my top movies of all time, I definitely found myself more appreciative of the filmmaking this time around, though maybe I'm partially biased because I think horror films are all the more fun and entertaining at the drive-in. I don't think I have to explain what this movie is about, but in a nutshell, it follows a group of teens who are being terrorized in their dreams by entity Freddy Krueger. Though he doesn't breach reality, usually, Krueger is still very powerful in their nightmares and their lives are constantly at risk. I still walked away feeling like the practical effects were the best part. Truly, very few people were doing it like Wes Craven was. I was particularly impressed, spoiler, by the death scenes involving Tina and later Glenn. And of course, there's the iconic scene with Nancy in the bathtub. This is definitely a movie that I would have loved to have just been in the room for, just watching how they accomplished everything. I still think the sequel, which is terrible aside from this one thing, as well as Kyle Gellner's wonderful performance, better understood how to convey the utter fatigue that these teens would be feeling, but I definitely noted the copious amounts of coffee Nancy was inhaling this time around, as well as her overall broken yet determined demeanor by the end of the film. The acting is still hit or miss for me, particularly with Nancy, our leading lady, unfortunately, and yet I'm also bizarrely charmed by the performances. What can I say? This is classic horror 80s camp. I found it to be even more rewatchable this time around, and they absolutely hit it out of the park with the ominous ending. It may not be Halloween yet, but I guess Summerween is now a thing, so get in the mood with this spooky flick.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Somehow, I nearly missed out on this when it first released in May, and I still can't believe just how fantastic this year has been for horror, particularly from young directors. Even in this past month or so, there's been Backrooms, Obsession, and Leviticus, which I still need to see. It brings me so much hope for the future of this industry, and I'm thrilled that there's still so many movies to look forward to this year. Backrooms, interestingly, originated as a vague story concept through creepypasta, user-generated horror stories or urban legends circulated across the internet, which was something I was not too familiar with. I would hear people talking about Backrooms on social media. I knew it involved creepy, mainly empty rooms, and that was it. Well, no one knows who first came up with the idea. Kane Parsons, the director who's only 21 at the time of this video, became well known for creating Backrooms found footage short films on YouTube. His first one, following someone exploring the rooms, has 87 million views and was created solely on Blender. Fast forward 4 years, and Kane Parsons is now directing a feature film with A24, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renata Reinsve. It would be too hard to explain this winding narrative, but if you've seen the original YouTube video, you may have a good idea of where it's heading. Ejiofor's character, Clark, owner of a rundown furniture store, finds the backrooms, explores the backrooms, tells his therapist, Dr. Mary Klein, played by Renata, about the backrooms, foolishly takes his employees into the backrooms, and things don't go well. Let's end it there. What is most effective about this film is the use of found footage, my favorite moment being Clark exploring the backrooms alongside his employees Catherine and Bobby. He manages to come across so many different rooms. By the way, they built 30,000 square feet of the actual set, each with a uniquely haunting and discomforting aura. While there's a lot you could take away from this film, it left me thinking about the rise of cynicism and isolation in our society, particularly living in a post-pandemic world. If you have a chance, I would highly recommend you check it out while it's still in theaters, as people have been having so many different reactions and it's fascinating to see. I promise there's very little blood or gore, the film predominantly relying on quiet moments and tension. I'm so excited to see what Kane Parsons does next, and that final shot still hasn't left my head.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
For as long as I can remember, Steven Spielberg has held a special place in my heart. Throughout the 29 years of my life, he has always been there. E.T. was one of my first cinematic experiences when they re-released it into theaters. I loved it, even if I was deeply traumatized by the government kidnapping E.T. I still remember hearing the Indiana Jones theme song for the first time while watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, once more traumatized, this time because of melting faces. I watched Jurassic Park for the first time, complete with my own personal pan pizza on a snow day. I watched Saving Private Ryan in history class, traumatized yet again from the opening D-Day scene. In middle school, I developed a bizarre crush on animated Tintin from The Adventures of Tintin. I fell asleep on a plane while watching Bridge of Spies. Maybe I will give it another chance someday. I rekindled my love of filmmaking while watching The Fabelmans, and I somehow only just saw Jaws for the first time last year while at the drive-in, and now it's become one of my favorite films of all time. Even if I don't love all his films, I could write an essay alone on what I think is wrong with Hook. I love Spielberg. Film would not be the same without him, and he truly embodies the phrase movie magic more than anyone else I know. So, that being said, I was really excited to see my first Spielberg film in theaters since West Side Story. All hail Mike Feist and Rachel Zegler. Well, it's clear this is going to be a contentious film. My brothers were not big fans when we saw it at the drive-in. I absolutely adored it. Again, there is no word that quite captures its essence like magic. In particular, I feel like it's a great companion piece to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and not just because of the aliens, showing two different Spielbergs almost 50 years apart. Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt absolutely steal the show, though Colin Firth is delicious as a villain, and I really enjoyed being introduced to Eve Hewson. There is tension and despair and violent actions throughout the film, but ultimately, it is one about humanity and the hope that can drive us forward. A message that we desperately need now, delivered to us in a way that only Spielberg can. It was a whimsical journey, and one I can't wait to take again soon. That's all for June, so please let me know what you thought and what you watched down below. There are so many exciting movies coming out in July, and I can't wait to discuss them here at the end of the month. As of July 1st, I have already watched 2 films, so already off to a better start than June. Bye for now.